The executive summary is a short document that is meant to be standalone, meaning that you could read the executive summary and understand the idea of the business by itself. And it's kind of attached with a business plan, or sometimes it's shared separately from the business plan. For this class, we will not be turning in the executive summary, but it's important to know that the executive summary is an important part of the business plan. And it's kind of like a summary of the rest of the business plan. And in the business plan, as you're trying to persuade the reader of the business plan, you're trying to tell a story. And so I've broken up the parts of the business plan and what you're trying to tell in the story as follows. So first, the reader of the business plan would be someone who could potentially invest in your business, and they don't have very much time. And you would imagine people that would have enough money to invest in businesses would not want to read the whole document like a book. So the executive summary is short, and basically the point of the executive summary is to just indicate to the reader, hey, we're worth your time. You should look into reading the rest of the business plan or meeting with us. So the first part is the executive summary, that you're trying to tell the story, hey, we're worth your time. And then as you get into the initial part of the business plan in the company and product description, you're trying to indicate to them, hey, there's this compelling problem and we have a unique solution. So you're trying to persuade them of that in a story. If you can persuade them of that, then you're trying to move on to the next section or sections, the target market and the market analysis. And the goal there is to try to tell the story that customers will actually buy your product. In the next section, in industry and competitive analysis, you're trying to tell the story that you can actually win relative to the competition, the other companies out there doing similar products or services. And then that's kind of the first half, to say, okay, this is a good idea. And then the second half, as you get to marketing, you're trying to explain, hey, we can sell our products. And then the operations and management sections, you're trying to tell the story that you can actually execute, that you know what needs to be done, and you can actually do that in order to compete in this industry. And then finally, there's lengthy section of financials, and the goal here is to persuade the reader that this business is actually worth pursuing, that it's potentially profitable and also attractive financially. At the end of the business plan, you include a section for appendices. And these appendices, the goal here is to try to persuade the reader that you've done your homework, that you have thought of the questions that they have, and you've already included information to help answer them. In the past, we've helped to prepare students for the Southern Nevada Business Plan competition. This is the format been required in the past for the Southern Nevada Business Plan competition. First, you start with an overview of the basics that you want them to remember, then the problem, again, using a short story, a solution, concise description of your pain reliever, and again, it's always good to use graphics to identify your solution. Then you illustrate the opportunity, which is related to how many you could sell, your competitive advantages, how your solution is better and how your company is better. Then the business model, how do you make money? Finally, next you talk about the team, how you're going to be able to execute. Short idea about the financials, that the numbers work, and then finally how much money you need and where you will spend that money if you get it. So you can see that a lot of the same sections of the business plan are covered, maybe in a with a little bit different words or maybe different order, but very similar to the full business plan. So the executive summary is like a summary of the full business plan, but it's meant to be able to be read by itself rather than a section of the business plan. One of the tools that I want to introduce you to in creating your business plan is this model, which you might have seen maybe in Philosophy 102 as you're learning reason and logic. And this is called Toulmin's model of logic, but there's similar models out there. Basically, you can see here that you begin with the background, and that helps to provide claims. So you'll have many different claims. For example, in each section of the business plan, you will make a claim. For example, in the first section about the company and product description, you'll say that there is a real problem out there that you can solve, and that your product is better than the competition, for example. And then you provide reasons to support that. To support your reasons, you also provide evidence. And then to make your arguments persuasive, you will provide reservations that limit the reasons and evidence, and also qualifiers that kind of bound the claims that you make. And I'll go into a little bit more detail here. The reason I want you to think about this is that this will help you to better make arguments in whatever you're going to do, whatever business functions that you have. You'll need to persuade other people. This model of argument will help you do that. The first part is that you have to make claims. So these are the things that you're trying to convince the audience of. So you have to state them directly, clearly, and succinctly. There may be subclaims that you can break them down, maybe more than one sentence. After reading the business plan, it should be very clear what your claims are. So suspense is not good in a business plan, so you don't want to try to surprise someone at the end of the business plan or at the end of a section. You want to state your claims up front. Don't bury the lead, as they say in journalism. You may need to negate alternative claims, and we'll talk about that in a second. Then you'll need to give reasons. You'll give reasons to support your claims. And this is the logic of why the claims are true. And this is an area where I see lots of students make mistakes in that they provide a claim such as, our market is 600,000 individuals from 20 to 50 in Las Vegas. Okay, that's a claim. That's the claim of their market. But they don't provide a reason for why. Why did you choose those age ranges? Why did you choose Las Vegas? So there needs to be some logic there. If you don't provide the logic, sometimes it can be confusing. I think a lot of students realize that they need to provide evidence, they need to provide stats or facts, data. Definitely that is very helpful in a business plan. Obviously, as you've heard in other classes, it's really important to judge sources based on their quality or integrity. You wouldn't want to choose some source that is not reputable. You'd want to choose the sources that are most reputable, and then you want to indicate where you got those sources. So in our business plan that you'll write for this class, I want you to put those in footnotes. This isn't an English paper, and I'm going to say that several times. It's not an English paper. It shouldn't look like an English paper. You do want to indicate very easily that you have a source for the material that you have, and then having it at the bottom of the page is the easiest way to check it. Most of the time the reader would not check the sources, but if they're interested they could, and that would be the easiest way. And so there's no standard format for how you format the sources, but just indicate where it came from. A lot of times those could be links. You might not be familiar with this idea of qualifiers. And in the business plan, this is really important. Qualifiers help to explain the assumptions that you are making in order for your claims to be true. Now, this is really important because when you are writing a business plan, you have to map out into the future what's going to happen. You're foretelling the future, and you are most certainly going to be wrong in many ways. And that's okay. There's no way to foretell the future. But the reader wants to know the assumptions that you're making, and the assumptions that you choose will really help the reader to understand if you know what you're doing. So if you don't put assumptions in, the audience is going to be skeptical. So you need to explain your assumptions. You'll have a page for that in the appendix, but you can also put that in the text. So for example, when you're explaining your financials, you could put some notes in there about your sales estimate. So for example, this example here. This estimate of sales based on achieving 30 sales per employee in year 1. If employees only make 20 sales, the estimate would be reduced to whatever estimate. And you could put those kind of explanations in the financials. If you can explain all of these assumptions, it really helps the reader to understand that you've really put your time and effort into this, and you recognize how dependent your estimates are based on your assumptions. And then finally, the reservations. It can seem like you don't ever want to point out the problems that you have, but if you're going to get help from people that really know what they're doing, they will have experience and they will know that every business has many potential problems, and if you don't recognize them, they will be skeptical. So it's important for you to recognize the potential problems. If there's problems that you have, you try to refute those problems in the text, and then try to improve your logic. So for example, you might say, we don't have a lot of experience, however, we're able to gain knowledge of this market with low cost because we're in school. We also have used Carlson's context to convince John Smith to be an advisor for this startup. So recognizing your weakness and then addressing it head on, that is something that you should do in a business plan. So as I've kind of intimated so far, you're trying to write this business plan to a particular audience. In this case, your arguments are very dependent on your assumptions about the audience. So if you assume too much, then people don't understand. So if you've ever been around somebody who has some technical knowledge and they start talking to you and you don't have that technical knowledge, they assume you do. They're talking and you just don't understand. And they use a bunch of acronyms and technical terms that you don't even understand. If you assume too little, then if you assume that your audience doesn't know anything, then that can be boring for the audience, and it can also make them feel like you don't respect them or something like that. So in this case, you are assuming that you're writing this to people who could potentially invest with you as a partner in your business. That's the type of business plan that we're writing. So they're very knowledgeable, and so this type of audience need more qualifiers and reservations to show that you understand your weaknesses. If you're trying to find an investor who could be a partner in your business, typically those type of people have seen a lot of plans already. So you want someone who's already got experience. And they typically don't have a lot of time. You know, if you could think of people that are successful enough that they could potentially invest in your business, they probably see a lot of people trying to seek money from them. So you want to try to make your business plan compelling. So get to the point. Maybe in some of your classes you have thought that longer is better, and so you want to put in filler, and so the longer your paper, your essay is, the higher the grade will be. But in this case, your audience doesn't want to read more. They want to get to the point more quickly. So filler is not good. Use more informative and persuasive figures and charts. So you want this to seem closer to like a business brochure. So it should look closer to a brochure advertising your business plan to a potential investor rather than an English essay. So it should not look like an English essay that's double-spaced and has a citation page and is mostly text. It should not look like that. It should be very figure and graphic heavy. Obviously, you need to proofread it, and then just don't include stuff that's not necessary. Whenever you go through your edit, and I'll say this later in the course, try to take out all words that are not needed. Have one person in your group just read through it and say, are these words needed? Do we have any phrases that we say out loud but are really not needed? Some materials of people who have done similar business plans or have done business plans in our class. This nice link here from University of Colorado. This guy, Frank Moyes, he provides a list of business plans here that I think is, it's useful to look at. So you can go and look at some of these business plans to see what they look like. And now these aren't perfect, but it's helpful to understand what are we looking at, because some of this stuff that you will find online is actually not the type of business plan that we're looking at. Okay, so that's one source. Also, I have some sources from business plans from class. Let me see if I can bring that over. And then business plan materials. I have several exemplars here. I have the rubrics that we'll use in class and an outline and the spreadsheets that we'll use for the financials. So those are some good materials that you can start looking at business plans.